Hi everybody, good afternoon. My name is Beth from Beehive Yarns and this is my very first podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. As I said, this is my first go at this. I am absolutely terrified. Who knows whether this is even going to make it onto YouTube or not, so we will see. It's taken me the best part of a morning so far just to do my setup here, because it was only when I sat down to start recording the video that I actually realised how messy my office was. So nothing looks as it normally does. Everything's been kind of pushed back behind the camera so that you can't see all the mess. And hopefully nothing's going to fall over and pause the video or anything like that. So please bear with me. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing, and yeah, we'll just take it from there. So, as I said, my name is Beth. I am the dyer and owner of Beehive Yarns. We are based in the UK. Dye lots of lovely yarn from our home-based studio in North Yorkshire. We also do knitting and crochet accessories and handmade stitch markers and things like that. And inevitably I'll be talking about Beehive, and you'll see that I knit a lot with Beehive Yarns through the podcast. However, I'm not going to be doing shop updates or things like that. I'd like to keep that separate. So yeah, whilst talking about work is going to be inevitable, and obviously the wool is a big part of our lives and what we do, it's not going to be kind of about the shop, if that makes sense. Instead, it's going to be about what I've been working on. I'd really like to kind of, have a chat with you guys and create a bit of a community around what we're all making, whether that's knitting, whether it's crochet. I've got a bit of cross stitch to show you as well. And yeah, just see where that goes really. So yeah, full disclosure, I do knit almost entirely from Beehive Yarns. When you've got your own yarn business and you're surrounded by wool that needs sample knitting, then of course, that's my kind of go-to. But I think I do have something today to show you which isn't Beehive Yarns, but I'll always be upfront and honest with you. So yeah, I've been watching knitting and crafting podcasts for years and years now. In fact, listening to them when they were all, back in the day when they were all audio podcasts, and thinking about doing my own podcast for a long time and sort of umming and ahhing about it for years. But I don't know why, I thought this week I'm going to bite the bullet. I've got a few projects that I can show you and some other things coming up. So let's see how it goes. So as with a lot of podcasts, the kind of format that I'm hoping to follow is to show you some finished objects or some projects that I've recently been working on, a little bit about what we've been up to, and also, WIPs, works in progress, and what I'm currently working on or what I'm planning to be casting on soon. As I said, I do have a bit of cross stitch to show you today, so this is going to predominantly be about knitting. I do mainly knit. I do crochet as well. I actually started crocheting quite a long time before I learned to knit, and I still do crochet, but I don't have any recent projects to share, and I should remedy that really. I would really like to have more crochet items in my wardrobe. There's some gorgeous patterns, really sort of modern, contemporary crochet garments out there at the moment, and I'd really like to have a go at more of those myself. And I also really like crocheting at home, so we've got a couple of crochet blankets that I've made, crochet cushion covers and things like that, so I'm trying to convince myself as well as you guys that there will be more crochet to show in future episodes, hopefully. But yeah, predominantly I would describe myself as a knitter, but also very multi-craftual, so I will jump in to anything, or as Vul and Vine would say on her podcast, down any kind of rabbit hole when it comes to crafts. I've had you name it, I've had a go at it. Recently bought myself a macrame kit. Haven't had a go at that yet, so you never know, that might crop up in a future episode. And I do have some cross stitch to show you today. So right, without further ado, I will jump in and tell you a little bit about what I'm wearing. So this is the Salty Air Tee. Just stand up a bit so you can have a look at that. The Salty Air Tee, and that's a design by Samantha Guerin. So Samantha is an American designer, at least I've said that, and that's what I believe, but now I've said it, I'm doubting myself. She could well be Canadian. Apologies, Samantha, if I've got that wrong. But she is from over the pond, as we would say. and that designs some really, really beautiful patterns. She's got some gorgeous tees like this. I think I can think of another 2 or 3 tee patterns that she has that are in my queue as well, but she also does kind of heavier weight sweaters. Just really lovely, simple. I really like her aesthetic and designs. And yeah, I cast this on, I would say probably only a couple of weeks ago, and it took less than 2 weeks in total to make. So again, my kind of pattern, guys, you know, quick, instant gratification, and you know, just a really simple and flexible kind of top to have with your outfit. So I'm wearing it with jeans today. It's slightly cropped. It would look really nice over a long or mid-length dress or something like that. So yeah, I couldn't recommend it more. Really fun pattern. It has an easy lace chart at the top, which, you know, to be honest, I would say suitable for beginner lace knitters as well. And yeah, just kind of almost boxy body. So really simple and just really beautifully written pattern. So massively recommend this. I took mine, it belongs to me, my top on holiday with us recently, and knit some of it on the beach. So it's that simple really. And just to kind of show you the yarn, I'm not going to dwell too much on the yarns in the shop like I said, but just to show you, this is what I knit it from. So this is, not focusing, there we go. This is called Burnt Umber, and was one of our summer yarns from a range called Golden Hour, but actually it's so lovely and so kind of autumnal that it's going to be available through autumn as well. But the reason I kind of wanted to show you the actual yarn, and I do apologise if I'm really rubbish at focusing things, is because the pattern is written for fingering weight yarn, 4-ply, and originally it was knit in a linen mix, so merino linen fibre, I think, which is not a base that I carry in the shop or that I even have in my stash. So I wanted to choose a 4-ply yarn that would have a really nice drape. So I went for our Bardo base, which is high twist yarn. You can sort of see that there, probably not. It's plied, and the plies are kind of twisted, and to me that gives it a really nice drape. So that's why I chose it for this top, and I think that's worked really quite well. So yeah, definitely recommend that if you're sort of choosing a 4-ply yarn to work with, then if you can find a high twist version, I really recommend it. And the thing about high twist yarn as well, it's my very favourite base to dye as a dyer, because the speckles really, really pop. So if you're into speckled yarn, have a look out for that kind, and you'll like it, I'm sure. So yeah, that's my salty air tea. I can see more of these in my future. Like I said, Samantha does have other kind of tea patterns which are quite similar. So I might give one of those a go next, but I could definitely see myself making this again, and I would recommend it if you are a relative beginner to knitting, or even if you're kind of a beginner with lace. It's a really good kind of entry-level lace item. Right, so I'm just going to, all of my stuff is of course all over the floor and in various boxes, so do excuse me while I have a rummage. So for finished objects number 2, and I say objects because there's 2 of them, this is the Wild Rose Cowl by Tracy Miller. Tracy of the Grocery Girls, one half of the Grocery Girls, who, if you do watch knitting podcasts, I'm sure you've heard of them. And Tracy, well, actually both of the sisters design knitting patterns, but Tracy designed these, and I've made 2 of them. As you can see, they're kind of mirror images. If I hold them up together, you'll see one has got the sort of dark background and the neutral, and then the other one swaps that over. And the reason I made 2 is because you can get 2 cowls out of 2 skeins of yarn. So you know, that just seemed the perfect way to use up the leftovers really, and to showcase the yarn, because let's be honest, you know, owning a hand dye yarn business, I'm always looking for samples for the shop. Whilst I do knit for myself, and I only choose to knit things that I enjoy, you know, that I would enjoy to wear, and I do wear them myself, I also have an eye on what I'm going to need a sample of, or what I can take to a show. So this I thought would be really nice to showcase the yarn, and you know, having 2 out of 2 skeins I think is a real bonus. So if you're looking to do some gift knitting perhaps for Christmas, or you know, you could make one for yourself, one for a friend, really kind of simple pattern. And I am not a big colour work knitter, so full disclosure there, I love knitting lace, that's my very favourite, but colour work, I absolutely love the outcome, and I love colour work sweaters and things like that, but it's not my comfort zone, so I have to really kind of push myself. And I think that's just simply because I've never quite got the hang of holding the yarns, and I just need to have a bit more practice really. So I'm not a new colour work knitter. I've probably made quite a few projects, very simple projects, but I only gravitate towards simple colour work. So yeah, it's an area really that I'd like to set myself a goal to improve on, and maybe you can help me kind of keep track of that on this podcast. But this is, I would say, a pattern which is suitable for a new colour work knitter. It's only 2 colours, the floats are relatively small, and yeah, like I said, a simple knit that you knit in the round. So yeah, another pattern that I definitely recommend. And I just think it makes a lovely gift. And I think this time of year, you know, you might be thinking about gifts for Christmas and things like that. A cowl is a really kind of functional but very pretty item, isn't it, to gift as a hand knit for somebody. I think, you know, everybody's got lots of hats, and a cowl I think is something that people would really appreciate. Okay, so my next finished objects, I'm just checking the list I have on the floor. So are socks, and I knit a lot of socks, so I've got quite a few to show you. And I was casting about the house this morning looking for projects that I could show you that I'd finished quite recently. So I thought I could get away, this is the first podcast, I could get away with like bringing in some really old projects and pretending that I'd knit them recently, but I decided to be honest and not do that. So I've kind of gone for things that I've finished in the last month or so. And this is a pair of socks that I knit for my husband Marcus. So again, try and get that in the frame. He's been nagging me for a pair of socks for years. I say nagging, not nagging, but he's wanted a pair of socks knitting. But he's got size 13 feet. And I've kind of, you know, always tried to get out of it, if I'm going to be honest with you. But to be honest, it really wasn't a chore. I really enjoy knitting socks. They're probably one of my favourite things to knit. And I did enjoy making him these, and he absolutely loves them. So I was going to say, you'll probably notice that they have been worn, and I do apologise for that. So they're not as fresh as they could be for a new FO, but that's because they are well loved. And the night that I finished them, kind of got Marcus to prop his foot up and, you know, put the sock on, and he was like, "Oh my God, it hugs my foot." And I thought, that's what you want to hear, isn't it, as a knitter? When you've knit something for somebody else, you want to hear that kind of joy of discovery. You know, I've just worn my first hand knit sock and it was amazing. So yeah, he loves them, and I might knit him some more. So this is the project where I haven't used Beehive yarns. These are actually knit in a yarn by Herb's Black Regina, who was a German hand dye company. Now Regina no longer dyes yarn, which is a terrible shame, because I really love her stuff, and I've got a couple of really cherished skeins in my stash, including this one. So you know, Marcus is very knit worthy and he deserved some fancy yarn, so I kind of used it upon him. But the colourway name was Let's Build a Boat, and it's inspired by, you know, the TV series Vikings. In the very first episode, when Ragnar and Floki are planning their kind of sailing over to England, and they start building a boat together. So that's, I think she maybe did a Vikings series of yarn, and this is maybe sort of 3 or 4 years ago now. So yeah, this is where it came from. My husband loves Vikings, and he kind of looks a bit like a Viking, if I'm honest. You know, he's kind of big and beardy, and he's got boat-shaped feet because they're so big. So I thought it was quite perfect. So I just kind of winged this pattern. So you'll see that I knit a lot of socks, and I tend to kind of make the patterns up as I go. So either a vanilla sock, or they're like a cable or a ribbed sock. I don't necessarily follow a pattern. So On this one, I think I just did, I'm just going to count it, I think it was a 4x2 rib, and then every 10 rows or so I just sort of twisted the alternate cable, if that makes sense, to kind of get these like long lozenge shapes. I'm probably not making a great deal of sense, am I? But yeah, that's what I did, just to kind of make a bit of a, I don't know, kind of like masculine looking pattern. And yeah, they were a lot of fun, and actually knitting for a size 13 foot wasn't as painful as I thought it was. So, you know, if he plays his cards right, he might get some more. And my next socks were knit for me. So with the Viking socks I did a heel, flap and gusset. But when I knit socks for me these days, I do an afterthought heel. I enjoy the afterthought heel. I find it really, really fast. But to be honest, I enjoy heel, flap and gusset as well. You know, it just kind of depends what mood I'm in. But because I knit a lot of socks, I've kind of got my recipe down pat for myself now. So I know, for example, like fish kiss lips heel, fish lips, you know which one I mean, doesn't necessarily fit my foot and instep very well. German short row equally isn't the best heel for me, so I tend to go with the afterthought heel because I've got my recipe down and I know exactly how much to knit and how it's going to look. So yeah, that's what I tend to do. This is a very vanilla sock, so this is in our one of our summer colourways called Grenadine, with a really lovely bright pink pop at the top. And then this one was called, the colourway is called Dreamscapes, again a summer colourway. And that one's just a simple rib, and I really love ribbed socks. They're a bit more painful to knit, not painful, you know what I mean, they're not as quick to knit, but they just fit so well. I really do enjoy knitting ribbed socks. So yeah, you'll see that I knit a lot of socks, and I tend to do them for samples of colourways, new colourways. So when I'm working on a yarn collection, obviously it's great to see the colours knit up. Sorry, it's really warm and I've got long hair. And you know, little swatches, little square swatches are great, but I do think, you know, I prefer, if I'm going to spend my time knitting something, I like to have something that's practical or that I can display at the end of it. So these are socks that I will probably take with me to a yarn show, for example, and display on a sock blocker, and then they'll end up in my sock collection. So yeah, that's what I do. And then this is actually a whip rather than a finished object. So this one I've only half finished because I've just done this one. And again, this is another summer colourway called Sea and Sand. And it's a micro stripe yarn. Again, I'm not entirely sure how nicely that's shown up on the camera. But it's quite pastel for me. I don't really dye a lot of pastel-y colours. But it kind of went with the summer vibe that we were doing, and I also don't dye many micro stripes actually, but I think they're really, really fun when you're knitting a sock. It just kind of makes it go that faster, you know, even if you're using like a self stripe yarn or a micro stripe yarn, or doing a scrappy sock or something like that, the colour changes just make you want to keep knitting, don't they? So yeah, I like that. So I've cast on the second one, and that's one of my whips, which hopefully I'll have finished as a pair next time I podcast. And I've got it on one of our sock blockers, so these are available in the shop. I'll just sort of move that sock down so you can see it better. These are laser cut wooden sock blockers on a little hanger, little velvet hanger, and they come in 3 different sizes. I did say I wasn't going to talk about what's in the shop, so apologies for if you think I'm dwelling on this, but I know that people will ask. These are blockers that we stock, and they're just brilliant for, you know, blocking your socks, making them look neater, and also for displaying them. Us podcasters, I can say that now, like to display things, so I think they're really handy. So yeah, we've got 5 different designs and they're all beautiful. Okay, so that's my sock parade. I'm sure that there will be more to come. In fact, I'm pretty sure that I've got more socks dotted around the house in project bags that I haven't remembered to pick up, so I'll just have to show those next time. Do you knit socks? I'd really like to know actually. Pop it in the comments. What's your favourite thing to knit? Are you a garment knitter? Do you gravitate towards socks? are you a big gift knitter? I am not a big gift knitter. In fact, I'm a really resentful cow of a gift knitter. So, you know, like you've seen with the socks for my husband, he can just about get away with that. But I don't knit for other people. You know, it's not fun. The last thing I knit for someone else was for my auntie last year or the year before during lockdown, and she had come to see us at Yarndale, which is cool of her. She's a super cool auntie, by the way, really cool. So there was super loads of pressure on me to get it right, but she'd chosen a pattern, and I'm not going to say the pattern name because A, I can't remember it, and B, you know, I'm not going to be very nice about it, but it was a very long stretched kind of triangle shape. So it's kind of half shawl, half scarf that went to a very fine tip. And there was nothing wrong with the pattern at all, you know, the beautiful design, beautifully written. However, it was the most boring thing I've ever knit in my entire life. And it took me months, 6 months to finish this thing. I was so bored with it. And it was stockinette as well. And I'm used to not purling so much. You know, when you knit things in the round a lot, you get used to just knitting garter, don't you? Or rather, you're just knitting. Whereas this was knit and purl. And oh my God, it was painful. So I was really pleased to give that away when it was finished. And I kind of swore then that I wasn't really going to take any more commissions or gift knitting. You know, I'll go back on that, of course. And I probably sound really mean, but are you like that? Do you like to knit for other people? I am a selfish knitter. Don't mind saying that. So, moving on. This is my next finished object. And I kind of say that in quotation marks because I don't think it's fully finished because I think I'm going to have to make some modifications. So this is by Petite Knit, and I've instantly forgotten the name of the jumper, the no frills sweater. So I think every man and his dog has made this at some point. A simple raglan jumper, and I've knit it with fingering weight yarn and mohair held together, so it's super floofy and actually really quite heavy. It's in our Beehive yarns colourway Cozy Up, so a nice kind of wintry, warm, homely colourway, which is exactly what I wanted in my jumper. And I finished it a little while ago, but I thought I'd show you it because I'm going to have to do some doctoring, I think, because this is like where, you know, some things don't go well, and I'm all about sharing the good and the bad. And I thought, right, I'm going to make some amendments here. I don't want tight sleeves, so I'm not going to do any decreases. Yeah, do you see where I went wrong there? Yeah, I'm not going to do any decreases in the sleeves until I get to the cuffs. So I didn't. I think I did maybe one after I joined the sleeve, you know, after you'd finished the body, and I went and I started the sleeve and joined in the underarm. I think I maybe did 1 or 2 sets of decreases, and then I didn't do any for the whole sleeve until I got to just at the cuff, where I did a rapid decrease and then the cuff. So the end result is not just, I wouldn't even call it a balloon sleeve. It's like, what's bigger than a balloon? A parachute? I don't know. It's gigantic. It's gigantic. And it's not really the look that I was going for. So, of course, I didn't just do one and then try it on and realise my mistake. I did the whole thing. So I did the whole sweater. Sorry, it is really creased as well because it's literally been thrown in a pile of shame. Because, you know, obviously I'm not happy with it. So I need to basically unpick the sleeves. And as I said, it's mohair, so I'm not looking forward to that. And I might not do it for some time. I might not ever do it. No, it would be a terrible, terrible shame to never finish it, because it is a lovely pattern. I absolutely adore the colour. It's exactly what I wanted. But yeah, I don't think I can live with the sleeves. So at some point, not now, but at some point, I'm going to have to unpick that. So I'm kind of putting this on here because A, I want people to see that I make massive mistakes with my knitting, and just like everybody else, hopefully you do too. And also I'm kind of trying to hold myself accountable for the fact that I will go back and fix it at some point. So we're on episode number 1 now. if I indeed publish this and come back for more, if anyone watches it, then let's see if I ever get round to unpicking these sleeves. So yeah, you feel very welcome to drop me a message and give me some encouragement. So that's my no frills sweater in the Hall of Shame at the moment. And my final FO is a bit of a cheat because I didn't knit this, but I really want to show you it because it's absolutely stunning. So obviously you can imagine hand-dyed yarn business, we need to have lots of samples of things knit up for shows and for displaying and on Instagram and everything like that, and in the shop, and also for doing kits. So I have a lovely team, if you like, of sample knitters who I can call on and who knit for me in the yarn, and it's absolutely brilliant, and I just love them all so much. And this was knit by beautiful Carly, and she actually made this a little while ago. I don't know why I'm having such trouble holding it up. There we go. I'll just hold it up like this, and hopefully you can see it. But this is the Stripes sweater by Andrea Mowry. And it's just lovely. She's just made such a good job of this, Carly. Thank you so much. And she knit it really fast. And yeah, it's just a beautiful shop sample. And the reason I'm showing you it now is because it's just such perfect, or in my humble opinion, such perfect autumnal palette. So we will have kits for this going in the shop this weekend for our autumn update. But yeah, I just think it's lovely. And the striped sweater, this is a slightly cropped version, but you know, as obviously I just said I didn't knit it, but in my opinion and from what I've heard, is a relatively simple knit, but also just really striking and effective, isn't it? You know, so this was knit with 4 colours of yarn, fingering weight yarn. I have a feeling it's the pattern calls for sport weight, like quite a few of Andrea Mowry's patterns do actually, or certainly quite a few American patterns call for sport weight yarn. Sport weight's still not particularly common over here. I've stocked it once or twice in the shop, but it's not something that I have in all of the time because it's not a massive seller. Although I think it's very beautiful. And the thing is with sport weight, a sport weight sits between a 4-ply and a DK, so it's around about a 5-ply, and therefore depending on the pattern that you're going to be making, you can often substitute it either for, if it's, you know, a heavier weight, you could substitute it for DK, light DK yarn, or you could often substitute it for fingering weight yarn. And obviously gauge swatch and maybe check your needle size and go per needle size and things like that, just to get that right. So I have a feeling Stripes, I might be wrong, but I have a feeling Stripes is written for sport weight, but mine is knit in fingering weight in our Audrey classic sock base. So yeah, I just wanted to share that because it's such a pretty project. Absolutely admit that I didn't make it myself, but big shout out for Carly for making it for me. And excusing the crinkling, but that's the kit of yarns that we'll have in the shop. So you get 4 different colours, and of course the striped sweater you could use as many or as few colours as you want, couldn't you? You could use a kind of scrappy use a poly scraps, or use up a mini skein set or something like that, and really kind of make it your own. So I really like patterns like that. Okay, so just take a little bit of stock looking at my list on the floor. I'm so prepared. Those are all my finished objects to show you. Also just need to check the time because I have to go and pick up my son very soon. So what I think I'll do is take a little quick break. Hi everyone, I'm back. So apologies for that. I had to dash off and pick my son up from his sports club. I almost forgot. Moment of the year. I also got told off by him for wearing lipstick when I picked him up. He doesn't like that. So yeah, I said, look, give me half an hour to finish my podcast and it'll come off, don't worry. Bless him. He doesn't like change. It's not that he doesn't like makeup on women or anything like that. Don't worry, I'm not raising a little chauvinist. But he doesn't like, he's at that age, he doesn't like change. So anyway, that's where I've been. I've rushed back and he's now firmly ensconced with Roblox. every 8-year-old's friend. And I'll just carry on where I was. So I think I was about to show you my whips. So I've actually only got one knitting whip this week. So 2 if you count the socks. So obviously I showed you one of my stripy socks. So I'm just starting the second one of those at the moment. I haven't brought that with me. And then I've only got one knitting whip, which is not unusual for me. I'll explain why in a moment. But this is the whip. This is what I'm working on. It's called the, oh, that looks a little bit better. The Larinda shawl pattern. So it's a shawl. And as you can see, I haven't got particularly far, maybe 20% or so. This is a pattern by the Webster Street Knittery. That's what it looks like. And this pattern, I would say it's been out a couple of years, and it's been in my queue since it was released, because it's just exactly my kind of shawl that I enjoy to make and to wear, because it's just got that lovely, lovely texture. And the texture's made with, see if you can see better on here. The texture comes from a mixture of garter stitch, bobbles, and then twisted rib. I'll just put the pattern down, and I really like twisted rib effect, and I'm enjoying knitting this. But, and there's always a but, I don't know if you can see the gauge that I've knit this at. So I went with the it's fingering weight, and I went with the called for needles, which I think is a 3.75. And in hindsight, I possibly should have gone down a needle size, because if you can see that, there's quite, you know, it's quite see-through in some places. And instead, I kind of bravely soldiered on. And every time I pick it up now, I'm thinking, oh, would I have preferred that in a slightly smaller needle, slightly smaller gauge? So the jury's out really on what I'll do. I've obviously already commit quite a few hours into this, and I don't want to start again, so I'll probably plod on. And to be honest, when it's like obviously next to the skin, or when it's going to be worn, you will not be able to tell that. It's only because I'm holding it up to the light and you can see through it, and that's entirely personal preference as to how you like your knits. So yeah, that's where I am with it. And I'm knitting this, and I guess this is a bit of a secret really, on a brand new yarn base that I'll be bringing to the shop next month. And I am going to tell you about it, even though I said I wasn't going to talk about work. But this is just delightful. Completely brand new to us. So this is a BFL Masham blend, so 100% British wool. Not only British, but very local. So obviously Masham breed of sheep are bred in lots of places, but Masham itself and the name of the breed is just down the road from me, and the mill where this is spun is not far from me either, and they're really lovely people. So yeah, this is a brand new base, and I've had it for quite some time to have a play around with. Probably almost a year now actually, and sort of was going to launch it earlier in the year, and then thought, well actually it's a woolly wool. I'll say a bit more about it in a minute, and therefore probably lends itself more to autumn winter rather than a spring summer launch. So hence I've been sat on it a little while, but I'm so excited to get this in the shop. It's quite unlike anything that we've done. So we've had BFL blends in the past. They've always been either 100% superwash BFL or BFL nylon blend, and they've been beautiful, but this is something entirely different. And again, I don't know how that's going to show up. I do apologise if it's blurry, but it's a really lovely, I want to say it isn't rustic. That's the beauty of it. It's that perfect mix of, you know, a British wool that has a rustic appeal, but there's no scratch to it. It's very soft, and you know, indeed next to skin soft. This is the 4-ply, and I'm just going to grab, just bear with me a second. And then we also have DK. And these are just a pleasure to dye. So yeah, exclusive, guys. I've not mentioned this anywhere else just yet, and I'm hoping that I'll be ready to release these in September as a range, and indeed bring them with me to Yarndale at the end of September, or towards the end of September. So yeah, I've been working on them for a while. I'm building a palette up of between 12 and 16. I haven't quite decided yet on the number of colours. They will all be tonals, and a mixture of very earthy tones. This is Foxtails, which is one of our established colourways that we have in the shop. Indeed, it's as old. The colourway is as old as Beehive. It's one of the very first ones that we dyed. So Foxtails actually comes up very true to previous versions of Foxtails on other bases, and therefore will retain that name and that colourway, whereas other sort of our long-standing tonal colourways look entirely different because the base of this yarn is grey. It's a mild heathered grey finish, which just gives all of the colours a really, really lovely heathery finish to them. But it does mean, because it is a grey base, that some colours come out looking entirely different. So and also, you know, it's an opportunity to do something that particularly works with this blend. So I didn't want to replicate our existing tonal yarns right across the board. There's probably 3 or 4 where they will be straight colourways. So Foxtails is one of them. We're going to have Cemetery Gates, which is a charcoal grey, on the Masham as well. That looks very similar. Maple looks very, very similar on all of the bases, so we'll have that in Masham as well. But this one and the other colourways will be brand new for this range, and it's just been a joy to kind of come up with them. So this is the 4-ply version, and that's what I'm using on my Larinda shawl, and it's just soft. It's just gloriously soft, and it's not the first thing I've knit with this yarn. And as I said, I've had it a while, so I've knit a DK hat, which I'll show you on another podcast. And I've been lucky enough to have a couple of sample knitters knit up some really, really lovely colourwork sweaters that we can use as shop samples. So again, I will keep those and show you those in a future podcast. So I hope you don't mind me talking shop for a moment, but this is our new Masham base, and super, super excited about it. So yeah, so that's what I'm currently working on. And I said I would explain. So I am without doubt a very monogamous knitter, and I know that's probably quite unusual in knitting circles, because, you know, we love, as knitters and crocheters and crafters, we love to start new projects, right? It's the best thing, is kitting up and starting a new project and finding a new pattern and finding new yarn. And I do enjoy all of those things, but I just, as a person, I just find it more relaxing to have 1 or 2 projects on the go at once. So I'll often have a pair of socks and a shawl on the go, or a garment and a shawl on the go. So we've usually got 2 to kind of work off each other, especially if one's a bit more complicated. So if I'm doing like a colour work garment, for example, which, as I've explained, is not particularly my comfort zone, then I'll often have like a pair of stockinette socks that I can just pick up and do while I'm watching TV. But apart from that, I don't tend to have tons of whips, which might mean that from a podcasting point of view, I'm not as exciting as some people. I don't know. But I just, you know, that's how I like to work, and be interested to hear how you guys like to work as well. I think I've asked the question on Instagram before, and there seems to be quite a big, you know, split. But, you know, it's fun casting on new stuff, but I just prefer to not have lots of project bags and live projects around me. So yeah, I feel pretty boring. I've just got that one knitting whip on the go to show you today. So let's see how far I get with it, and let's see what I cast on between now and the next time I podcast. On the other hand, I do have a couple of cross-stitch whips. Are they still called whips in cross-stitch? I'm not really familiar with the lingo. I've been cross-stitching since I was, I guess, like in my early teens. And I was really into it in my teens, and even at university. Kind of I remember taking cross-stitch projects with me at university, just in terms of like mental health. I didn't knit then, but crafting for mental health has always been really important for me, and having that kind of downtime and that, you know, what we would now call mindfulness, I guess, which back in the day when I was at university wasn't a concept that I understood anyway. But yes, I have known how to cross stitch for a long time, but it's not something that I have done consistently. But it's something that I really, really enjoy. So this is one of my current whips, which, as you can possibly see, is Halloween themed. There's lots of pumpkins on there and spooky houses. I really, really like this lady down here. I can show you it. With the umbrella and the flowers. I just really, really like her. And this is a design by Plum Street Samplers, which, if you're familiar with cross stitch, I'm certain you will have heard of that design house. This is the finished design. It's called Jack's Bash. And yeah, it's very sort of pumpkin-y, Halloween themed, and the colour palette is to die for. It's all my favourite colours, you know, very copper, orange, olive green, that kind of thing. And I'm embarrassed to say how long I've been making this. I think I first started it about 4 years ago, around this time of year, so just before Halloween. And I've only worked on it sporadically. And I am a slow cross stitcher or embroiderer, any kind of needlecraft in that sense. I am slow at it because my eyesight isn't brilliant, and especially now I'm getting on a bit, I struggle a bit because I wear glasses for distance and for watching the TV and stuff. Do all my crafting in the evening, really. And I'm thinking, you know, if I'm knitting, I'm fine because I don't really look at my hands too much when I'm knitting. But for cross stitch, which is obviously tiny, I'm kind of at that stage now where I need magnifying glasses or readers or something, and I don't have varifocals and I don't want varifocals, so I'm kind of constantly swapping over my glasses. So it's not the most relaxing experience for me anymore, which is a shame. And I kind of haven't got to grips with how I can make cross stitch a bit easier for myself. Like, I know that you can get magnifying, God, I don't know the name of it. You wear them like over your head, and they kind of slip over like this, and you can look down, or even just like a magnifying glass. I don't know what the solution is, and I probably need to spend a bit of time looking into that so that I can finish this off and just make it a lot more enjoyable experience. Alternatively, what I could probably do with doing is setting aside some time during the day to do some stitching when I'm not watching TV, you know, when I'm maybe like listening to a podcast or something and I'm not having to look at the screen, and therefore I'm not having that same issue with having to keep swapping my glasses around. But you know, I don't know about you guys, but I find it hard to kind of carve out that time during the day for myself, and I think it's just about me coming up with a better routine, really. But I'd really love to hear if you stitch, if you cross stitch or embroider, or indeed if you have a similar situation to me but with knitting or with crochet. How do you manage that? You know, have you come across any wonder products that you'd like to recommend, or just practices that have made things easier for you, and how you manage that? But yeah, one last look. So there we go, Jack's Bash. And you probably can see from here in the pattern that I held up, I've just got the lettering to do. So I've finished all this design, and I just have the poem and the alphabet to finish. So I've left my least favourite bit till last, basically. Classic. But I would really, really like to get it done. Obviously, it's still only the end of August, but for me, I know I'm not going to get this done for Halloween this year. That's just not possible for me. So who knows? Let's see if I can get it done this winter, and then it'll be ready for next Halloween. That would be ideal. But I really love that, and I really like Plum Street Samplers. They do make some really nice I don't know what the name is for it. I watched some floss tubes, but I'm just not down with the lingo. Is it primitive? I don't know. If you know, let me know. But they've got a lovely colour palette as well. Okay, so that's that one. And then I did mention another cross stitch because, you know, I am a glutton for punishment, and despite, you know, not finishing that one, I've started a new one. But I couldn't resist this. You'll see why when I show you the pattern. I've only done the teeniest bit. And it is this chap here. Okay, see if you, do you know, I know it's going to be backwards, but do you know what this is? So this is the final scene from The Wicker Man, the film. And I spotted this cross-stitch design. It's by a designer called, I'm afraid I don't know the lady's name, but the design house, her brand is called 8-Bit Cross Stitch. And she does these really kind of stylized patterns, which are often, I have a feeling she's probably a similar age to me. They're kind of often based on 1980s, actually maybe she's a little bit older, but like 70s and 80s popular culture icons. So for example, I mean, there's The Wicker Man, which is obviously a 1970s film, but she also has like David Bowie, she has you know, Are You Being Served, all those kind of like 1970s sitcom that are almost like cult classics. I would say that's a good way to describe it. They're kind of cult classic characters, and she seems obsessed with Sparks, you know, Sparks the band, the two brothers. She seems obsessed with them. She has lots of Sparks designs. She has a Debbie Harry design. She has Kate Bush and Madonna. So like all of their looks through the decades, she's done a little figure of each outfit, each look. Honestly, you need to check her out on Instagram. She's so clever. And I spotted this several years ago, this Wicker Man design, and had it like in my queue, if you like, or in my Etsy favourites. Her shop's on Etsy. And yeah, my husband and I, we really enjoy watching horror. Let me rephrase that. My husband really enjoys watching horror, and over the last 22 years I have been forced to enjoy watching horror. I'm really joking, I do really like it, and we really particularly like the genre which is known as folk horror. So we've been rewatching Wicker Man and Blood on Satan's Claw and Midsummer and all such as that recently. And yeah, I was like, the second we stopped watching The Wicker Man the other day, I was like, right, it's time for me to purchase that cross stitch. And he was like, yeah, you need to do that, we need to have that on the wall. So yeah, it's the very last scene, and it's fab. And you may not like horror, and you may think that's ghastly, in which case I apologise. Horses for courses and all that. So yeah, so they're my two cross stitch whips. Obviously, as you can see, I've barely started that one, so that's going to take me some time. In fact, these are both going to take me years, let's be frank. I'm not a fast cross stitcher, as I've said. I'm a little bit faster at knitting, and I spend more time knitting. That is like my number one hobby. What's your number one hobby? Are you multi-craftual? Do you crochet and knit, or, you know, do you dip in and out and you do various things? I'd really, obviously this is my first podcast, I'm completely winging it. I'd like to hear, you know, what you'd like to hear about. Would you like to see more cross stitch, even if I don't get very far on these things? So, you know, when I do have some, I won't show you if there's no progress, but if I do have some progress, are you happy for me to sort of do a segment on that, or would you prefer it just to stick to knitting and yarn crafts? Yeah, I'm keen for some feedback, really. Be kind. It's only my first go. So yeah, those are my FOs and my whips. I did say, so as I said at the beginning of this, obviously my business and Beehive Yarns is a huge part of my life and my family's life. We work, it's a family business and we work from home. So, you know, to give you any kind of life update is inevitably going to involve that. But what you know, whilst I don't obviously mind talking about Beehive and, you know, holding up the odd skein of yarn to show you, it's not because I don't want to show you. I just don't want to feel salesy at all. It's not, this isn't a pitch, you know, this is a chatty podcast about what I've been making. So what I've decided to do, because we have a shop update on usually at the end of each month, so we've got one at the this weekend coming, the end of August. So what I'll probably try and do is do shop updates on like Instagram lives, or maybe even do a separate video, I don't know. But I know people like to see the yarn and the stitch markers and things, you know, that are going to be in the shop. So I'm very, very obviously happy to share them, but I just don't want to do it necessarily in this forum. But when I'm giving sort of like updates on what we've been up to, it's inevitably going to go onto Beehive. So in terms of what we've been up to, I kind of didn't do really much of an intro to this video. So by way of outro, I'll maybe tell you a bit more about myself. So as hopefully you'll know by now, my name is Beth. I live near a town called Thirsk in North Yorkshire in the UK. I'm from York originally, which is about 20-30 miles away. So and I've lived all over the UK, but we moved back up north, as we say here, just before we started our family. So sort of 8-9 years ago. And we just love it, and we moved out into this rural area about 2.5 years ago, literally a couple of weeks before lockdown and the pandemic hit the UK. And we were happy as Larry when that happened, because, you know, when you move into a new house in a new area, you kind of just want to nest, don't you? And that's you know, it felt good, although it obviously stopped us meeting neighbours and getting out and about and understanding the area as much. It did give us a lot of time to explore on foot, so, you know, going out for country walks and things like that, where we weren't going to go past people. We were able to do a lot of that. So I'm going to be honest and say we were really quite happy at the beginning of the pandemic, and I know a lot of people were, you know, and then obviously 2 years later we were all feeling the burn a bit. So yeah, we've been here about 2.5 years, and we love it, and we work from home. So about a year ago now I left my job. So prior to that I'd been doing Beehive yarns and a day job at the same time, and also sort of raising my family. And about a year ago I made the decision to jump in both feet to do Beehive yarns full time, and I have not looked back. And I just, you know, almost regret all of those years, because it was years. I started Beehive yarns over 5 years ago, about 5.5 years ago, when my son was 3, 2.5, 3, he's a toddler. And I spent several years really chewing myself up about whether I should try and do it full time. I loved my career. I'd worked a very long time, you know, building that career and all the rest of it, and it gave me a lot personally. And therefore I found it really difficult to weigh up whether to make the leap, and everybody around me was saying, do it. You won't look back, and I'm really pleased to say that I haven't looked back. I enjoy it, and I consider myself exceptionally grateful and very lucky to be able to do this creative business full time. And, you know, it involves my family and our home, and we're lucky to have the space in which to do that. So I feel very, very fortunate, and I guess I mention that because it was such a big life change that year ago, you know, jumping into this full time, and I literally wouldn't be sat here, or I wouldn't have been able to make that decision had it not been for the masses of support that we have from our customers. You know, it's just phenomenal that like I said, you know, what started as a hobby became a creative business, and something which is able to sort of sustain us as a family. So I didn't want that gratitude to remain unsaid, if that makes sense. It's a huge part of our life. And in terms of what we've been up to recently, like every day I have been dyeing wool, skein wool, washing wool, etc, etc. And maybe one day I'll pop in a video if you'd like to see a little bit of behind the scenes. I'm really hoping to, we have like a studio space which is attached to our house. Quite lucky to have quite a big space, and it's one of my future plans would be to glamour that up a bit, because it's skanky, you know, it does the job, but it's an old space. But I would really like to we need to do a bit of work on it, and then eventually I would really love to be able to open it up, so to have, you know, maybe a local knit and natter, or some kind of drop-in open studios, open studio sessions would just be like my absolute goal. I'd love to do that. So that's something that we're kind of having to think about at the moment, in the early stages of planning. Just because, you know, in an ideal world, and I don't think I'm alone in this, you know, I'd love to have a brick and mortar shop. I would just love a craft and yarn shop. My husband and I, our absolute dream, which we've talked about for years and years and years, would be to have a premises which was like a kind of a cafe on one side, like coffee shop on one side. It would sell occult and rare books run by my husband. Think of like The Ninth Gate, if you've seen that film. And then it would be a wool shop on the other side. So that's like our absolute dream. Now, of course, there's probably only my husband and I who share all of those three interests. I don't know. Maybe there's more of you out there who would like occult books and yarn. But yeah, that would be my dream. But you know, it's just, obviously it's not the climate. I say obviously, maybe it's not obvious, but it's not the time, it's not the climate to be going on brick and mortar shop adventures. I don't think. So you know, we are looking instead, or have been looking and working towards expanding what we offer as a shop, as an online shop. So we've always obviously had my hand-dyed yarn in the shop, and that will always remain the focus. That's what Beehive Yarns is about, and that's what I do day in, day out, every day. But over the last few months and in the months to come, what we're doing is expanding what we offer as part of the shop. So you know, a lot of our kind of time and energy recently, particularly my time and energy, has gone into, you know, researching products and, you know, knitting needles, for example, you know, being able to stock needles and crochet hooks and all the kind of accessories that come with crafting. And really, really excitingly, over the next coming months, you know, sort of introducing some other local makers in terms of a marketplace type scenario in the shop. So you know, I've been really lucky enough to meet people who make fabulous handmade soaps, ceramics and things like that. So being able to sort of introduce some new things and introduce our customers to new makers that hopefully that they will like as much as I do. So that's kind of what I've been up to really the last few weeks during the summer holidays, and whilst kind of juggling having my son at home, and you know, that's the kind of next steps for us as a business. So I thought I'd just, I don't know, have a bit of a chat about that and let you know in terms of, yeah, that's what we're doing. So yeah, I think that's about it. I hope you've enjoyed this. I am aware that I ramble quite a bit, so I do apologise if it's been a bit of a rambler, but I hope you've enjoyed seeing my projects, and yeah, thank you for sticking with me if you've made it to the end of the video. Drop me a like, drop me a comment below if this is something that you'd like to see more of, and again, thank you so much for sparing your time today, and yeah, take care, happy knitting, and I'll see you soon.